You're listening to The Riff, a podcast by North Point Church. There's a lot more to the Christian journey than what can be presented in a 30-minute time slot from a stage on Sunday morning. Our host and lead pastor, Jeremy Johnson, highlights the vision of North Point Church and the Christian journey through stories, interviews, and unfiltered faith ramblings. We hope the conversations will help you engage in how faith interacts with your life. I think we're ready. Let's go for it.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is our very first ever, our pilot episode, maybe the only one that ever gets aired episode of this new podcast called The Riff. And you have been specifically chosen to find this. There's probably only about 4 or 5 people. And so that's why you listening is a big deal to us. Thank you so much for doing that. Hey, here's what we want to do on this. We want to have an opportunity to talk about some things that maybe don't fit time-wise or just more random than a weekend setting. And I wanted to start this off by talking to a couple people who I believe their story is North Point's story. North Point exists to create a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus. And I want to walk through a story of how this actually happened in somebody's life. And I'm thrilled that this is true for many people who call North Point home, and I'm also prayerful that this continues to happen. Now, if you like this podcast, tell a friend, tell somebody, do something. If you don't like it, come on, let's just keep that our secret. Is that a deal? Is that a good deal? Okay. Hey, let's dive into this conversation with Jeff Berry and John Alexander as they talk about how North Point became this safe place for them. Thanks for joining us. Well, thanks so much for joining us. This is our very first episode of this podcast. And so we have wild aspirations of the millions of people who have probably already downloaded this.
10.
Yeah.
10 people.
Yeah, we're 10 people. We made the staff do it. But hey, thanks so much if you are joining us for tuning in today. But I want to say thank you to Jeff and to John. I want to introduce you all here in just a second. Big deal to me that you would be here as our guest on this very first trial run of said podcast. So awesome. Well, Jeff Berry, tell us a little about who you are, a little bit about your family. What do we need to know?
Gosh, I'm a transplant here to the Springfield area from Illinois and St. Louis. And I have a beautiful wife, Missy, and I have a son, Colton, who's a senior in high school, and I have a daughter who is a junior at Ole Miss. And I feel like I just intro to a game show or something. So
well, and I just a little
Wheel
less
of Fortune.
prize money, but yeah,
it
very
feels
similar.
like Wheel of Fortune.
Well, I tell you what. Now I saw this on social media. Your daughter's pretty smart. Like she wins papers that say it and everything, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And your son could dunk a basketball.
That's true. Yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I like it. Okay, well, awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
John Alexander, tell us a little bit about the Alexander tribe.
Yeah, so we grew up in Missouri, so we're natives. I guess I should say beautiful wife too, right? You put me on the spot. So
you better.
So Jennifer, so a lot of you will know Jennifer if you've been around North Point. So we've been around North Point about 5 years. Been in Springfield a long time. 2 sons. So Andrew or Drew is going to be a senior this year in high school, and then Zachary's going to be a freshman.
And so now we're starting to think college and all that kind of stuff. And let's see, Drew is one of the head chefs at Sonic. Is that correct?
Yeah, Sonic Republic. He would love it if I told you not to visit.
Awesome.
So that they're less busy, but
very good. So ask for an extra corn dog. Tell them Jeremy sent you. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming in. Well, now John and Jeff, you didn't meet each other today. That's correct, right?
True story.
How long have you known each other? How did you guys meet?
Well, so I started a little software company with some friends back in 2002, and we were hiring for a software engineer position in 2009. So we posted the job, and Jeff replied.
Yeah, I think I was here working for a company that was sinking fast, and I think I posted to a local group here asking for employment, and John answered me. And then I think a few months later, you had the official opening.
That's great.
Yeah,
Okay, so you stole him. You stole him in 2009.
Rescued.
The rescue would be a better.
That's good. I like that. So now you guys quickly got to know each other, and you worked together now. What, that's 10, 12 years. I'm not great at math.
12 years.
I mean, your daughter would be able to tell us how many years
Probably.
it's been. 12 years.
Yeah.
Now, John, you've been coming to North Point how many years?
So 2015.
Okay. So you're 6 years in. Jeff, how many years are you in?
About 3, I think. About 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what I want to do is I want to walk through a little bit about your journey of even how North Point became your faith community, faith home for you. And it's always fascinating to me. And one of the goals of this podcast is to kind of give a little bit behind the scenes tour, a little backstage pass of what it looks like for our ministries. And sometimes even some of the stories of people who are North Pointers. And both your stories are fascinating, and how it's even connected has been fascinating to me. Specifically with even our vision. So John, tell us a little bit, as best you can remember. It's been a while now, 6 years ago, when you started your journey at North Point. What was that like? Kind of what stirred that and what made you stick?
Yeah, so I can go back further. So grew up kind of in a Christian home. Church wasn't like a huge deal to us, but came to know Jesus at about 14. So kind of as a teenager after a lot of wrestling with that, and went to college, met my wife. Kind of saw how her family lived. So her family was kind of in church constantly, like opened the doors, shut the doors, served everywhere. And that was appealing to me. So that was a cool thing to see how they lived. So we got married. I had a job in Springfield, so working at CU here in town. And so we got married and moved to Springfield. And so we started to look for a church together. And her pastor that married us, actually from the St. Louis area, he recommended a church here in town. So we visited there. Really good first visit. And we went ahead and visited a whole bunch of other churches. So kind of did the, where are we supposed to be?
That can
kind of
take
thing.
a while
Yeah.
in this area. Because there's a few of them.
It was a multiple months long process, right?
Yeah,
So,
right.
but we ended up landing at that church he recommended because of how friendly and welcoming everybody was. It was just a great experience. So that was 1999. So
Wow.
going back a while. Got plugged in there, served there, just kind of really modeled what we had seen with her parents. So we were there constantly, served, gave all the things that you would hope that a church member would do, right, Jeremy?
Oh, absolutely. We're going to get to that here in a second. Get your wallet ready.
So anyway, we're there a long time. So we'd been there about 13 years. Really had raised our kids there. It had become really our family. We didn't have any other family in the area, so just became our family around us. Just tons of friends and very close to people there. And it started to bother me a little bit that we really didn't see people come to find Jesus there. So like my kids got saved there. We saw our kids come to know Jesus, but really outside of that, not a ton of just people walking in and finding Jesus, right? Okay. And so that started to kind of bother us, and particularly me. And so that really led to a bunch of hard conversations with my pastor. He was a good friend of mine. And ultimately, that was, I think, 2012, 2013, and led to just a couple of years of conversations. We visited some churches, looked at some different, started to learn about kind of ministry, and just ultimately made the decision that we needed to probably look for a church. And really, that was the driving factor.
And then, what kind of church, looking for a church, coming from a church, what kind of church was on your heart to find?
Yeah, so that's where it connects to Jeff, right? So by this point, Jeff and I had worked together for several years. I was going to say nice stuff, that he really became just a key part of our team, just a critical part of the team. And we became great friends. And I knew Jeff didn't go to church. I didn't know if he knew anything about Jesus or anything, but I'm looking at Jeff, who I just feel a burden for. I want to be able to see him meet Jesus, right? And I'm like, I don't think I can invite him to my church. I don't think he would like it. I might be able to get him to come once, but he probably wouldn't come back. He'd probably look at him like, oh, that was lame. So that was a key driver as we looked for a church of like, man, I think we need to find some place that is going to be effective at reaching people that for whatever reason don't know Jesus. And that was a key driver.
Okay, so Jeff, in this equation, you're kind of a variable here.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that story, but it's fascinating is in John's mind, he's thinking with someone like you in mind, and you happen to be somebody, right?
Sure,
that he's thinking, hey, if someone like Jeff came with me, what would their experience be? So let's get back to John, and then I want to
Sure.
go and pick at your brain at what that looked like from your end. But so you show up in North Point, and how did you come about to the conclusion that this might be a place?
Yeah, so it wasn't as quick as you would probably hope, right? It was we visited on Sunday. It was a great experience.
Okay.
Probably
Good looking pastor.
I don't know. Maybe there was a guest speaker that day. I don't know. So the thing that I can remember is my kids enjoyed it. Like my teenage, I guess probably not teenagers at that point, but my sons enjoyed it. Like they could listen to you and they enjoyed it and laughed at the jokes. So some people laugh
Kind of
at the
my level
jokes.
right there. Yeah.
But we really were trying to figure out what God's will was for our life. And so we did again the kind of the church shopping experience of trying to find where are we supposed to be. And really the initial draw to North Point, there's another guy that works with us that had been visiting North Point. We went to the same church. He had been visiting on Saturday nights and was like, hey, you got to go check this out. You know, he kind of knew what we were wrestling with. And so anyway, so we visited a whole bunch of churches. I don't recommend it. It's a terrible experience, right? To have to figure out to find a new church home, especially with kids. Like it was really difficult for my wife and I we're going to pull our kids out of what they've only ever known. Yeah. But ultimately, after really probably 4 or 5 months of kind of looking around, visiting different churches, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start driving to North Point every Sunday if no one else has another church they want to visit. And we just kind of landed there. So that was around Christmas, I guess, of 2015.
Okay.
And then we were kind of still on cult watch, right? Like you like to use that wording.
Yep.
So we were trying to still figure out like, okay, what does North Point really believe? Are we totally aligned? Like it felt like we might be. And so then we came to Next Class in February of 2016. And at that time it was on a Sunday afternoon. And I can remember just trying to hold it together as I'm listening to you talk about the mission of North Point and the methods we used.
Right.
And I'm like, this is it. Like we've found the place. And so then really that led to a conversation between you and I. We went and had coffee together and ultimately we just jumped in with both feet.
Okay. And by the way, if you're listening on this journey, that Next Class is very important, especially, and we say this probably in Next Class, is if you're coming from a church, it's important that you go through this because you'll either help us or hurt us. You won't be neutral. And so we're not anti-church people at all. Matter of fact, we want to be able to grow church people. And I am one. But when you come to church, the whole purpose is, are you going to help join this mission of creating a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus? So if you've not yet joined that, we have that link. We'll even make that link available here on this page for you. But take some time and go through it. We would put it in as easy format as possible for you to be able to do it your space, in your place. Okay, so John, how long in the process did you start thinking about an invitation to Jeff? Because that could be a weird thing, and I want to get into that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I wrote as we talked about kind of questions for this. I've been praying for him for years, right? Like, give me an opportunity to invite him, right? And I'll probably get emotional as we talk through this, but
it's a little creepy. It feels a little creepy right now.
Oh, I want to get there. Yeah.
So, I mean, I was praying for him for years. And again, this was prior to us ever making the decision to transition churches or thinking about that. But it probably wasn't long after we had settled on North Point that I tried to make that kind of gentle invitation, right? Because I don't want to make it weird at work. I don't want to be awkward, right? Again, we're very close friends at this point,
plenty of
right?
chance to.
Yeah, for sure. So I didn't want it to be awkward. So I'm sure there was probably 2 or 3 times that I'm like, hey, Easter's coming up. It'd be a good time to visit, or hey, something's going on. Like I'd obviously try and pick my spots, right? Of when would be a good time to invite.
Yeah.
And he didn't really have in it.
Okay, I want to dive into this. Okay, so Jeff. Okay, walk me through a little bit about your faith background. What is that like, growing up?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of faith background. I was supposedly baptized as a baby. I don't remember that, obviously.
Spiritual experience for you?
Yeah, no memory whatsoever. And we never went to church. I don't remember my family ever going to church.
Okay.
My mom passed away of cancer when I was 10 years old, and her dying wish to my grandmother was that Jeff go to church. So I got passed to grandma to live with, and grandma did her best to make me go to church. And it was a very traditional, stodgy Methodist church. We sat in the hard wooden pews. It was a long sermon. She made me sing in the choir.
Now, is that a gift we ought to tap into?
No, it's not. It's a gift you should run away from. But I hated that. And then, so my dad kind of got his life back together, and I moved back in with him, and I got out of grandma's control. And then Dad tried to do some churches. So I don't know how weird I can be here on describing the churches we went to, but they were pretty odd. One was very rural Illinois, startup church, and like during worship songs, people would break out into, tongues.
Okay.
And me as a 13-year-old kid I would look around at these people and they're and I'm just like, okay, you all are nuts.
So that's your experience.
That's my church background. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was it. Yeah.
Did that leave you wanting a lot of more?
No, not at all. No.
Okay. So you go years and years without. Did you have this sense of, man, I really ought to do this, or just really kind of put that to rest and thought, I've tried it, not interested?
I think mostly not interested. Tried it, not interested.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then married. Dad of kids, going through that process. Yeah. You and Missy share the same vibe on that at that point?
Missy had asked over the years a few times, maybe we should go to church. And I would have none of that. No.
Okay.
Like HE double hockey sticks. No.
If you're not a speller, that means hell. Okay. So now walk through this for a second. You take this job with John. How long in the process did you know that faith's a big deal to him?
Pretty quickly in, probably I knew that. I mean, he was having meetings in the office with his old pastor, and this, this is kind of the Bible Belt, so faith is a big deal to a lot of the people in our office.
Yeah. So when he started dropping some soft hints. Hey, we got this great event going on at our church on Sunday morning early. How interested were you? What did you think? Was that a weird feel? Kind of walk us through that journey.
So it wasn't a weird feel. I don't mind people asking me really, but no, I didn't want any of that. And I usually other people would ask me too, and I think I had just a canned response. It was like, if I step foot in your church, it's probably going to burn down. So that was my way of saying no nicely.
Well, I can even remember we were talking about this. These other people would invite him. I'm like, no, please don't go there. Because I knew it was the same feeling. No. To different churches in town, right? I'm like, oh man, if he goes there.
It's going to confirm what he feels.
Right, 100%. So I'm like, they invite you, don't go there.
Okay, so let me walk through. There comes a day where you take John up on it. And I believe it was a class. You were teaching next class or
Starting point.
Foundations of Faith. Some questions. What made you say yes to that?
That's a weird one. John had talked about it kind of off the cuff a little bit, and I guess my wife and I were at a point in our marriage. Our marriage wasn't bad, but it also wasn't great. I think maybe, or not as good as it could be.
Right.
I should probably see this. I should watch what I say.
It was your fault.
It was probably my fault.
I'm sorry,
It
honey.
was definitely my fault. And I knew she had asked about church, and I thought this is a chance to. It was a time we could carve out together to do something each week. And so I asked her if we would give it a try. And plus, I mean, I'm not outside of this. I'm not going to say this, but John's a pretty good guy, pretty smart guy. So it's worth probably, if he's got something to say, it's probably worth hearing. Yeah. So I asked him about it, and he said, yeah, the next one's starting, you ought to come. And I'm like, I'm going to ask Missy and we'll see.
So you go on this journey, 6 weeks or whatever, 12 weeks, eight weeks
class,
of questions about faith. In that process, what was going on in your heart?
Well, I'll tell you, like when we, I'm very, very apprehensive, right? From my experience. So we pull up to the first class, and like the first thing you see is a safe place to find and follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's corny. I mean, that's
yeah.
and then beyond that, in my mind, I'm thinking, what have I gotten myself into? I've committed to 8 weeks. I'm going to have to go in here and listen to, people sell me on their imaginary friend or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how mean I can be, but this is stuff going through my head.
Yeah.
And I can't quit because I'm risking offending John if I do that. So that's kind of my initial thing. It was like, how am I going to sit through this for 8 weeks?
Yeah.
So,
Wow. So was there a spot during those 8 weeks that something clicked, or was it as a whole just something that you just tucked away?
I think it was a gradual thing. So we came in and it was really low key. It was comfortable. Mainly we got to ask questions. We watched some short, very basic videos. Andy Stanley is what we watched. And we got to ask questions afterwards, and it wasn't so bad. And then after the second one, I was actually looking forward to it each week.
Wow.
So
those were all a class, non-weekend class.
correct.
You came, am I remembering this right? You came on Easter for the first time?
Yeah, that's correct.
What brought that up?
John kept inviting us, in the class. It's, hey, Easter's coming up. This would be a great time to come.
Yeah, it was like right in the middle of the class. It was like week 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So he invited me. Yeah.
Okay. So now here's where I think it's so helpful for North Pointers who are listening is sometimes if we've been following Jesus for a while or going to church, or we think church culture is cool, we forget how countercultural it is and how weird it could be. When you get out of your car and go to a weekend service where hundreds of people, that's their norm and we don't think about it, what was going through your mind? Can you walk me through as best you can that first weekend experience?
So it wasn't super uncomfortable. We brought the kids, and my daughter was very resistant to it. But after arguing with her in the truck all the way up there, so we made it and we made it in. But I guess the things that struck me were how nice people were. People went out of their way to be nice to us. Open the door, give us coffee, say hi. I was just shocked. I was like, why are these people being so nice to us? They don't know us. And then it wasn't super weird. I loved the coffee. The coffee was a nice touch,
Yeah.
And we went and sat down, and I liked the worship music.
Okay.
So it was a pleasant, positive, good experience. The first experience, I think.
Yeah. And how far in the journey, or was there a moment where you're like, okay, because I remember seeing a card. I remember seeing a card, and we do these cards, and some people are like, our cards are big deal. And your story is an example of why cards are big deal. Because I remember hearing your story, knowing that you were checking it out. And then one day there was a card that says, I made a decision to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
What did that mean to you? What was that process? You're a thinker. You come resisting from the very beginning of the journey, and you get to that spot.
Yeah, it was I guess what I would say, it was a long process because it was long past the class before I checked that box.
Yeah.
But my wife kind of freaked out on it because I had been so against church for so long. And then kind of when I started coming to North Point, I got this just almost insatiable thirst for more of what was there. And just, just learning about Jesus, his teachings, what Christianity was about.
Right.
And Missy, not so much. Not that she didn't want to know that stuff, but not at the pace that I was, right? Yeah. And I was to the point where I was sneaking Christianity behind her back.
I was sitting here laughing because I can remember when you ordered a Bible in secret.
I
right?
snuck. I was sneaking. I mean, we have a computer. Each have a computer in the same
Clearing
room.
your history.
Yes, closing the window if she came.
I wasn't
by.
looking at Bibles, I promise.
I swear.
So, okay, so walk me through just a couple more questions here, just with our time here today. But a couple questions I have is, one is, how has Jesus transformed your life as you look back over the last several years?
Oh gosh, where to start? I mean, I don't even really know where to start, but I would say, like, on some level, every aspect of my life has changed. Like I have better relationships with people. I have, my marriage is much stronger. My relationship with my kids is much stronger. My outlook on life is much better. Like I've suffered depression some, not badly, but I have bouts of it.
Right.
Not that I still don't have some downtime, but I have purpose. I have support group. Just everything about life is better when you follow the teachings of Jesus. That's there. And then what's key for me is, and I'm going to compliment you a little bit, but the practical teachings that we do at North Point, where basically, how do I marry up the Bible to the current culture? What does that look like today for me?
Yeah.
It's been life-changing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Awesome.
For sure.
Well, last question I'm going to have both of you is, I want to go back to that corny slogan that was hanging from a wall the first time you visited a North Point campus: a safe place to find and follow Jesus. That's what we aspire to be. On our best days, we want to be. What does that now? John, you've been following Jesus a long time. You've been at North Point a while now, and you've seen how Jesus impacted people close to you. What is that vision? Why is that important to you?
Yeah, there's a slogan that the ministry that we use for our kids' curriculum, Orange, says that, everything changes when it's somebody you know. And like that's so true. Like the fact that I saw my friend come to find Jesus and see the transformation in his life, the find is the most important thing. And so even going back to when we were looking for a church, the number one thing we got to be good at is helping introduce people to Jesus. And that's going to show up in how we do things, right? Yeah. This is why we do things the way we do them. Nothing else matters if we're not doing that. Yeah. It just doesn't. And then at the same time, like, we need to be excellent at the follow part as well, to where we can see people like a Jeff that have made that decision. We want to see their life transformed and give them opportunities to do that, and easy on-ramps to take those next steps. So, awesome. We have to do both. Good. But if you don't have the fine part, you become a crusty old grumpy Christian that's probably not following very well.
Jeff, for you, you've gone through this journey recently. Why is that mission important to you?
I want to bring the same thing that I've been given to other people. Yeah. And so it's important, like, to me, the important things are to be that we as a church are welcoming when people come. Yeah. That we're happy, that we smile at them, that we're interested in them, because we are interested in them. I love that we're so open at North Point. Like, I tell the story a little bit, but like, we greet or we usher, and people will say, sometimes ask me, can I bring my coffee into the sanctuary? I'm like, yes, this is North Point. You can bring your coffee in the sanctuary.
And we don't even check what's in that cup, to be honest with you. That's awesome. Well, Jeff and John, you represent North Point. And so those who are joining us, whether they're someone who's been following Jesus and needs that fresh vision of, man, I want to help create a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus, I hope that they're encouraged by this. And Jeff, I hope you're encouraging those who might be on this journey, who are listening to this, that man, don't worry about your questions. Keep leaning in, explore what the claims of Scripture are, and see if Jesus just don't transform your life as he meets you where you're at. So thanks for being on this first ever podcast. It's an honor. I appreciate what you're doing. And Jeff, your story means a lot to us. One day I'll be 75 years old, living in Florida with my walker with brand new tennis balls, and I'll remember never the stats and the size of North Point. I'll always remember your story. That's why we do what we do, and I'm so glad that North Point could be a part of that story. So thanks so much for being with us, and congratulations on the attention span if you're still listening.
Thank you.
We've survived our first ever episode. I don't know if there'll be another one, but we did do one. Check that out, Mom.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. Submit a question for the podcast at northpointchurch.tv/podcast. We'll have a brand new episode every week wherever you find podcasts.